One, action. Hello viewers, this is your favorite Mr. Mark in the Mark Ndama Academy, your seasoned law and government and citizenship teacher and GCA examiner. In our today's lessons, we are going to examine the basic concept of rights and duties. So before we start with the basic concept, we are going to first of all start with the objective or the lesson objective, which at the beginning of every class, a student is expected to know the objective of that lesson. That is, at the end of that lesson, what should that student gather? What should that student know? That's what we call lesson objective. So as it is rightly tabulated on the chalkboard, you can see here the objective. We have what right and duty is, what are the rights of Cameroon citizens, what are the duties and the obligations of Cameroon citizens. So these are the objectives of our today's lessons. And when we want to now examine this objective, it will take us to the first aspect of our lesson, which is what is right. Now, as a student, you are expected to master keywords. We don't mark, we mark and place our ticks on the keyword. Meaning, when a student is writing in that sentence, you should be conscious that this is where I'm going to earn marks. Now, coming to the definition of a right. If you happen to be asked in an exam, what are the rights of Cameroon citizens? As a good student, you are expected to start with the definition of a right. You can't be explaining a concept to me. Meanwhile, I don't understand the concept. So you have to first of all start by making me to understand what the concept is all about. And the concept we have there is the concept of right. So if I ask my students what is a right, what I am expecting from them first, a right is a privilege. From that word privilege, I place my T. Or some students would say it is a just claim. A claim which is just. Apart from that, what else can the student give us as a right? It is an entitlement. Now, this entitlement can either be possessed or given to a person. Now, when we say it is possessed, how is it possessed? We have natural right, which upon birth, you acquire them. This right is not given to you. It's not given to you by your father. It's not given to you by the government. It's not given to you by the society, but it is given to you by God. That's why we call them natural right. Now, this right which we obtain upon birth, how do we call them? We call them fundamental, inalienable, independent, and invisible right. Why do we call them inalienable? For instance, the right to life. You cannot take your life and transfer to a person, meaning it cannot be taken away from you. That is the meaning of inalienable. Now we talk of fundamental. Why do we call them fundamental? The rights are inherent in such that you cannot live without this right. Like I rightly put it, the right to life. You cannot live without life. And these rights are interdependent. You can't tell me that you enjoy the right to education when you are not alive. Meaning, the right to education, freedom of expression, settlement, they all depend on that right to life. Without life, you cannot enjoy this right. Now, going to our course objective, I want us to look at the difference between the right of a citizen and the right which are given to human. Now, citizen, we are already taking side, which is a country. Now, in Cameroon, for instance, you cannot take the right enjoyed by Cameroonians and you compare them to the right enjoyed by humans. So the ones which every human being is entitled to, we call them universal or fundamental rights. And the ones which are given to maybe citizens of a country based on your status, based on your origin, based on your sex. Yes, if I use this, I think you can bear with me that a child has a right which the parents do not have. Why is that child having that right? Because of the status of that child. You can bear with me that by virtue of nationality, Cameroonians have the right to select their leaders, but a person in Cameroon who is not a Cameroonian cannot do that. Meaning, Cameroonians enjoy the right based on their status as Cameroonian, but foreigners do not enjoy the right based on their status as foreigners. So you bear with me that rights are not the same. There are fundamental rights and there are rights of the citizens. So here, we focus on the right of citizens, meaning we are not going to look at those fundamental rights, but we are going to focus on the right which citizens of Cameroon, that is, members of Cameroon. In our past lessons, we saw a citizen as a person who legally and naturally belongs to a country. So, members of Cameroon, people who belong in Cameroon, either naturally or legally, what right do they have? What do they possess as just claims? What privilege have they been given? What entitlement do they have? That is what we are going to say now. Now, before we go to these various forms of right, I would love us to look at the source. Where are these rights coming from? You will bear with me that at the beginning of every human rights education in the world is United Nations Organization. Why do I quote United Nations Organization? Immediately after the Second World War, they thought to prevent the occurrence of a different war. Thus, in 1945, the United Nations Organization was created. And when they created the United Nations Organization, they did not end at that level. Evident that their focus was on human rights in 1948. That is on the 10th of December 1948. They drafted what we call the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, from the inscription, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, meaning they recognize the right of human to be fundamental, and as such, they needed to make the world understand the usefulness, the importance of promoting and protecting the right of human. And as such, Cameroon, who is a signatory of the United Nations Organization, on February 1996 Constitution, they introduced it in the preamble, that is the introductory part of our document. If you open the Cameroon Constitution now, you will see the first part of it, the fundamental right of human. That shows how important it is. Then we are discussing the source of this right. Now, going detailed to the classifications of right, I will take us to this part. We have natural and inalienable rights. We have societal rights, which involve political, social, economic, and cultural rights. Now, I want to focus on first the natural right, which we have here. Now, natural or inalienable right. What do we call natural or inalienable right? These are rights possessed by birth. You have this right because you are a human being. You have this right because you are born. Upon the day you are born, within the territory of Cameroon, whether born by a foreigner or a Cameroonian, these rights are possessed. You possess the right. Now, what are some of those rights that by birth you possess? You have life. What do we mean by right to life? Meaning, if God has given you that privilege to exist as a human being, no human being, nor the government, should take away this right from you by killing you. Meaning, it is forbidden for whatsoever reason to take the life of another human being. Meaning, you are depriving that person's right to life. is liberty. That is, you should not be held in captivity. A person in prison can never be compared to a free man. When you are free, you have hopes. And when there is hope, it keeps on sustaining you. Meaning, it is an important aspect for human beings to have that liberty. That is, no human being should be held without a justifiable reason. For instance, the state can maybe apprehend a person for committing a crime, and you will be held under captivity, maybe in prison. That is understood. But you taking somebody's right, maybe because you want to intimidate the person, that's violating the right of that person. So liberty, every human being has the right to move freely, to be free, not to be held in captivity, to act freely, to feel free, and so on and so forth. We have freedom from slavery. It is discovered that at first, human beings were owned by others like property, which they could displace at any time. This became a call of concern, and that's why you saw the abolition of slavery and slave trade. So with slavery, it is forbidden for a person to claim another human being as his, that is, which you can dispose at any time. So that is a natural right. No human being should own another as his property, like your car. You have the right to own a car. It is a property, but don't take another human being to be your property that you can dispose at any time. So take note at this level. That is another natural right. Then we have another natural right in the freedom from thought. Who realize that at times people are being controlled on how to think, in such that you have something to, you have a certain feeling, and you are forced to reason a direction which might not be the right direction. But people, because of maybe the authority they have over you, they will tell you that this is how you are supposed to reason, whether you like it or not. You take an example like a child meet you with an assignment. My teacher told me that 1 + 1 is 2. Because of maybe your lack of competence, you tell the child that 1 + 1 is 11. And in the course of arguing with the child, you arrange a very heavy knock on that child's head, forehead. You say, quiet, when I'm talking, you don't object. In that situation, you are trying to channel the direction of that child's reasoning, which means you are depriving that child's right of reasoning freely. So I have the right to reason differently from you. It is a fundamental right. The fact that you are reasoning in this direction does not oblige me to reason in that same direction. So if you are compelling me to reason like you are violating my right to thought. I hope with that we have exhausted the natural right of a person. And so on and so forth. I can't say we have exhausted it yet because there are other natural and fundamental rights. So we move to civil and the political right. Now, with this civil and political right, they are rights which are given. When I say they are given, they are privileges given either by the government or by an organization in the society. I start with first, the right to vote. Most students have a problem here. They will state a right to vote. Quite alright, that is stating. Now, we are expecting the student to move further to explain to us what voting is. A student will write the right to vote. Every citizen has the right to vote. You have just spoiled everything. Why? Right to vote, you must well all know that it's not every citizen. A child of 10 years cannot vote. A child of 18 years cannot vote. In Cameroon, voting rights start at the age of 20. You must bear with me. So, how is a student expected to place this point to end his complete marks? You are expected to tell me what voting is, and an A-grade student will tell you that the right to vote, that is stating. That is, every eligible Cameroonian has the right to select state leader. Where do I place my team? On that select or choose, because voting is an established way of selecting leaders. So when they try to put that word choose instead of using the game food. Because if I'm marking, for instance, if I'm correcting scripts of my students, I will make them understand that if you repeat the statement, I will write the rephrase, and there is no meaning for that. So you have to explain that concept to me, not by repeating it. Right to vote. Every human being has the right to vote, or every eligible human being has the right to vote. You have gone off. I won't give you the mark for explanation. I take that is from the right to vote, I move to freedom of speech. Now, what is this right all about? Every human being has the right to express his or herself freely while taking into consideration the right of others. Please take note at this level, because most of us claim that I have a right to express myself. I have the right to express myself. Why tarnishing the image of another? You can't tell me that you want to express yourself and you openly say, I have the right to express myself. This man is a thief, with no justification, and as such, you don't have the right to call the person a thief. Meaning, you have violated that person's right, or you have abused that right of expression. Now, this right of expression, how are you supposed to place it? Every human being has the right to express his or herself opinion, either through articles, through press, or orally, without being restrained by others. I think with that, you place it that way, you deserve beautiful and a smiling tick. I move to the freedom from torture. We understand that human beings are exposed to degrading inhuman treatment like beating. At times, some are exposed to the serious suffocating. Others are exposed to electric shock. Those are inhuman treatment which expose human to what? Pains, which is violating Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You are not supposed to expose human being to what? Pains, either psychologically or physically. So with this torture, it is exposing human beings to what? Pains, and which is against the fundamental and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which I formally cited. We have the right to fair trial. What does that mean? Every human being has that privilege to seek the assistance of the legal sector of the economy when his or her right is violated. That is a right of human. We move to the right to protection. Yes, this is a right of a citizen to be protected, and the state, remember, the state has an obligation. It is not a duty, because I will explain when we get to duty. There is a difference between an obligation and a duty. The state is compelled to protect its citizens, and thus that is the right of a citizen. So if something is going contrary to you and the state is not intervening, that state has not protected your right, and you have the right to request the state to protect your right, because it is their sole responsibility and obligation to ensure that citizens are in safety and their property. So you take note of that. So how do I expect my students to put this point? Protection. It is a privilege for all citizens to be protected. That is, their properties should be safeguarded, and the citizens themselves should be safeguarded by the state authorities. Here we are talking about the law enforcement officers, which is the institution placed by the state to ensure the protection and the safety of the citizens and their property. We have the right, from there we move to social rights. Here we're discussing civil and political rights. We are now moving to social rights. These are societal rights which are common to the society, or which are given because we are the societal beings. We live with people, and as such, we need this right for a peaceful coexistence. And as such, we have here the social right. The first is to worship. Now, what are we saying here? You realize that in some communities, some religious practices are forbidden. Now, before we go to that, what is a student supposed to write under the right to worship? Every human being has the right say, this is barbaric and you should stop this. I have the right to believe and to follow whosoever. Or I open my own church. That is our religious right or right to worship. Now, for right to worship, we have education, which is a fundamental right of human. Every human being has the right to acquire knowledge, both formally and informally. When we talk of formal knowledge, that is what we acquire in school. When we talk of informal knowledge, we are talking about the morals that our parents give us back home. For instance, a girl child will come back home and maybe the child has not even removed the uniform from there and is going directly to eat. The mother said, no, that's not how we believe. That's not how we behave. You are supposed to do this first. As a woman, you need to be composed. This is what you do, this is what. The woman is teaching you there. It's not in school. You are not writing, but they are giving you morals. So a child has the right, or every human being has the right to acquire this knowledge. From education, we have the right to settlement. It is common in some countries where, because of social discrimination, people are not allowed to settle in other areas or because of tribalistic sentiment. Now, because of this ethnicity or tribalistic sentiment, people are refused from settling in maybe some lucrative area, which is wrong. In Cameroon, every Cameroonian has the right to settle everywhere in order to promote social coexistence. That's why a person from the south can settle in the central region and they have a place there. You buy a land, you build your house, and you live with them together. It is your right. In the point where somebody comes in and tell you that, my man, you are not a member of this community, you are supposed to go back to your area. That person has tampered with your right of settlement. So you take note. With settlement, every human being has the right to move and settle anywhere in the country of his or her choice without being restrained by another citizen of that country. For Cameroon is one. You take note of that. From there we are going to fly to economic rights. Now these are rights which are related to our day-to-day transaction with others. We have the right to work. Yes, working is an obligation and a right. Now, how do you place this as a right? Every eligible citizen who is willing and ready to carry out a payable tax should be given that privilege to carry out that tax. That is the right to work. Now, most students are always confused between the right to work and the right to earn payment. When we talk of payment here, that is, it is your entitlement to receive payment once the payable service is rendered. I repeat, payable service. Don't go and help your mother to fetch water and say, Mama, I have the right to earn payment, pay me. No, you don't pay there. That's why I said every payable service is rendered. The person is entitled to his or her payment once that service is accomplished. So take note of that. We move to open a business. Now, business transactions we are all allowed to open business transactions. But when you get to law will tell you that there are some businesses which the state alone can open or can carry on. Like we have a business to print currency. We have a business, the business of ammunition, that is fabricating weapons. You and I cannot do that. We are forbidden. We are restricted from doing such business. So if you are not within this line of restricted business, every human being has the right to follow and open his or her own business once the requirements are fulfilled to open a business. So nobody should tell you that you are not right to have a business. You are still a child of 25 years. A person of 40 years, I don't have a business, and you want to open a business? How come? That person is depriving your right to own a business in your country. So you take note of that. And we have, last but not least, under the economic right, we have the right to own private property. How do my students explain here, and how do I always advise them? How do you place your point here? I repeat, this area to own property. Don't tell me that every human being has the right to own property. You are going off, because I'm going to write a rephrase. And once I write a rephrase, if the point has 2 marks, I will give that every human being has the right to have movable and immovable assets. In as much as it is not belonging to another, you can still place it there. Every human being has the right to one, to own, to use, and to dispose movable and immovable properties which he has the right over. That is the right to own private properties. With this, we are going to conclude with the right of Cameroon citizens. As I said, you are expected to know first what a right is. As I said, it's a privilege, it's an entitlement, it's a just claim which a person has by virtue of that person's status. I say status here because they are rights which you own as a child, they are rights which you own as a student, they are rights which you own as a father, they are rights which you own as a mother, and so on and so forth. That's on status. Now, this entitlement, the ones which every human being owns, we call a fundamental right, and that we are going to examine in section C, citizenship, because we are now focused in section A. And these fundamental rights are the rights which every human being owns, irrespective of where you are coming from, irrespective of your sex, irrespective of your nationality, irrespective of your age, and whatsoever aspect of this distinction. So you take note of that. And we went further by saying that these rights are the source of this right we are claiming today. It is all originating from the United Nations Organization. And the United Nations Organization, as we said, is a birth of human rights in the world. For after the Second World War, they came together to prevent the occurrence of another war, and as such, they came with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on the 10th of December 1948 in order to promote the right of the human. And as such, our Constitution, which was drafted in February 1996, copied that in a preamble, meaning they recognize the importance of this fundamental right. And we move further by saying these rights have been classified into three. We have the natural and the inalienable right. We have the civil, political, economic, and the cultural rights. So under natural right, we saw the right to life, we saw the right to liberty, we saw the right to freedom from slavery and thought. Under civic and political right, we had the right to vote, we had the right freedom of speech, freedom from torture, fair trial, association, and protection by the law. That is what we have under the civic and the political right. Then under social right, we had the right to worship, we had the right to education, to settlement, we have the right to material right. Now, with marital right, with this, I think I skipped this. You have to know that with marital right, every human being of the required legal age has the right to leave the parents and form his or her family, marry and form a family. That is the marital right here. Then we touch the economic right, which we said every human being has the right to work, he has the right to earn or payable services, we have the right to open a business and the right to own private properties. I think that we have exhausted the right there, the concept of right. Now, moving to the concept of duty. Now, with the concept of duty, I would like to emphasize that first, you